Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our 7th webinar in our series, How to Bulletproof Your Business. Today's a special one. We welcome Marizette Topham. She's the National Sales Manager of Euphoria, our voice over IP and telephony partner. So she's going to have a chat with you guys, explaining the benefits of using a solution that they offer. Joining her is David Lees, Joint CEO of Aintree. And then, as usual, we also have Stephen Cohen, the Business Development and Strategic Director at Aintree. All right, guys, ready when you are, Dave.
Thanks, Jaco. So my normal introduction, we're now on, I think, our 7th in the series of webinars. And just to recap, what we're talking about is all the elements that you see in the cloud on your screen right now. We've covered almost all of them except VoIP Telephony and Plan for Continuity, which will be the next one tomorrow. I'm obviously very interested in all of the elements, and as I've said before, at Aintree we use all of these elements in the cloud, and we've kind of migrated over the years to be totally a cloud-based company, and that gives us a lot of advantages, which I'll talk about a little bit more at the end of this webinar. Today I'm particularly interested in today's webinar because I think VoIP telephony is something that, well, Marizette, when I hand over to her, is going to explain for those of you not quite sure what it is, but something that to me is something every business today should be looking at, as opposed to the traditional telecom copper wire based telephony. So without saying anything more, Marizette, I'm going to hand over to you. Marizette is from Euphoria Technologies, and they're our voice over IP partner, and we use their system ourselves. So welcome, Marizette.
Thank you very much, David, and hi, everyone. Yeah, David, thank you very much for this opportunity to elaborate a little bit more about what voice over IP is. Otherwise known as IP telephony. So voice over IP, you know, in layman's term, it's basically voice that travels over the internet. Now, that also gives you the ability to obviously link, you know, your voice to multiple devices. As you can see on the demonstration on your screen, you can link it to a PC, a cell phone, you know, laptops. You can even link it to a physical PBX if you wish. Via SIP trunk, but then obviously, you know, cost goes up a little bit more because of the different hardware that you use. It enables remote working, which means that you can always be connected. It's very, very cost effective because you're paying voice rates, and also the setup of voice over IP. You don't need to invest in physical you know, hardware or servers that run in your office in order to make it work. So as you can see there, it carries voice signals. So if you look at your normal analog setups, it carries voice signals over copper wires. So it's your physical telecom line that comes into your office that then links to either a phone or a PBX. You know, differences between the two, obviously the VoIP portion, it transmits voice over the internet. And then, you know, some differences between the two. With telecom analog lines, you know, there's definitely an inability to deliver flexibility on your geographical numbers. Whereas with VoIP, you can have a geographical number, and once it's ported to a VoIP provider, you then have the flexibility to really answer that call from anywhere. Analog systems also provide very little flexibility when it comes to being mobile. You know, the only thing you can basically do with an analog number is to forward it, where then it increases your costs. Whereas with VoIP, it gives you mobility because it can ring straight on the device that you put the SIP credentials on. Analog is legacy technology, so it works on physical PBX systems that are sitting in your office, whereas VoIP systems have the latest technologies. And because it's based in the cloud, you always have the ability to upgrade without that additional cost, which makes it very cost effective, and it leaves the analog side as very expensive, because let's say you start with a small company and you 3-4 users, you need to get a PBX that service perhaps 10 users. Once you get over those 10 users, you need to get a physical new PBX in order to cater for 11 users, even though you're still only on 10. So you're prepaying for everything that you might use one day. Whereas VoIP, you pay as you use, so per user, which makes it very cost effective. And then of course the rates that come with VoIP, you're probably looking at anything between 28 to 56% saving, depending on what provider you are phoning. Then of course, analog systems gives you very little redundancy, which means if someone steals your copper line, you're offline. Whereas VoIP, because it works over the internet, if your internet goes off, you still have the ability to link to LTE. Also, there's a lot more redundancy in the cloud, which means that we can send it across different connections so that you always stay connected.
Marizette, I just want to butt in there for a second, and I love what you said about the scalability, if we want to put it that way. So, I mean, you said something about when you have a traditional PABX, I'm sorry, the slide, the heading's wrong, the IP telephony should say analog. Apologies for that.
No problem.
So what you were saying is if you've got a traditional PABX, which, well, let's say telecom, because I mean, it's analog, but we know that's telecom. You, as you were saying, you kind of buy a PABX that you think is going to be sufficient for your requirements in a year or 2 years' time. So you're always buying something more than what you need. Whereas with VoIP, it's pretty much like those of you who watched our session on cloud hosting your whole server. The server's elastic, and it's the same as this PABX, right? So it's, you can add or delete extensions as and when you need them. And we've seen that at Irontree. I mean, if we hire a new person, literally we just phone you guys up and within half an hour, we've actually got a new extension, correct?
That's absolutely correct. We've seen so many customers, or come across so many customers that, even if the PBX suffices with enough extensions, they get to a stage where their requirements change and they need new features. And, that's another thing with physical PBXs. A PBX comes out with set features, and, for you to then increase just the features and the capabilities of the management system that comes with it, it means a lot of outlay that monetary outlay that you need to do in order to give you the features that you actually need. So with the Euphoria PBX, it comes with 200 plus features. That's always evolving. We've got a group of developers that are literally just increasing the features and making it more user friendly. Traditional PBXs, it's outdated technology. And slowly but surely, you'll find that more people are going onto voice over IP because of the flexibility that it gives you. With a server or a cloud PBX, you don't have any maintenance costs because everything gets done for you. Traditional PBXs, you need to sign, ongoing maintenance plans that people come onto your site, they service it, and if anything goes wrong, someone needs to come to your site in order to fix it. Whereas in the cloud, we fix it and you don't even know that there's an issue. There's no long-term contracts. It's a 30-day, it's not even a contract, it's an agreement. Whereas traditional PBXs, you sign 3 to 5 year contracts. And what you find, what I said earlier is, you might start a business and you think you've got all the features, and 2 years into it, you can no longer use that PBX because it doesn't give you all the features that you actually need to run your business. Ongoing remote support, it's free with our PBX, whereas, traditional PBXs, you require online support, and obviously there's costs for that. Our PBX comes with cutting edge functionality, and I'll go into more of the functionality when I do the demo later.
Which is kind of now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'll hand over to you, Marizette.
Sure. So as you can see, it's a web portal login. So this is the TMS system, the telephone management system that comes with Euphoria Telecom. So once I log into the system, it'll take you to a dashboard. Dashboard gives you real information, but you'll see on the left-hand side, there's some tabs there. Each of those tabs give you in-depth information. Now, I always say to people, you know, you don't need an IT person to manage this for you even. You know, receptionists can go into the system and manage it. Billing and accounts. I'm not going to go into the billing and accounts. It's exactly what it says. It's your account details, your transaction history, and any orders that you've placed. So you'll always have access to those things. TMS users, you've got the ability to set up managers, which means that you can set up teams underneath these managers to make it easy to control, and they only have access to what they see. You can also give those managers, yes.
Sorry, it's Stephen. I just want to make the point that, you know, I think that when people think about VoIP, it's mainly around cost savings. And obviously in this country, we all know that Telkom used to give very lousy service. But what you're showing me here is that it actually puts everything into your hands that one would never have dreamed of if you had a Telkom line. And, you know, all this geographic stuff you showed me. So I assume that even if you have a Telkom line with old PABXs, it still wasn't this user-friendly where you could have this whole management portal in front of you. And as you said, the receptionist could actually do this stuff.
No, absolutely. I mean, you know, that was the whole idea of, you know, when the system was created, to give the power back to the consumer, you know, so that they can manage their own systems. You know, with a traditional PBX, you're looking at a box that's either sitting in a server room or, you know, sometimes even just under the receptionist's desk. You know, it gathers dust, so it's not you know, the conditions surrounding that PBX, you know, will make it fail eventually because it's not looked after properly. In addition, if you wanted to have any management capabilities, you would need to get a different system that links up to it. You know, a lot of the older models uses a MAN 3000, I think it was called, that gives you a little bit of access to it. But again, you need to know how to use the system or how to get into the system in order to manage it properly. Whereas you'll see here, you know, very easy to distribute, you know, extensions or queues to different managers. You simply just drag and drop, and that extension is now assigned to the manager. You can assign and view roles. So if you wanted to add a new role, you go add a role, and you can call that role anything you want. You can say whether it's a normal extension or whether it's an actual manager, and you can give that role different permissions as well. So very easy to set it up yourself as well. Even when extensions are added, you can put extensions under management as well. Again, DIDs, I mean, a lot of people have telephone numbers, but they don't exactly even understand what those telephone numbers are being used for. So should you have brought numbers into the system, you've got the ability to actually name those numbers so that you always know what those numbers are being used for. There's also the ability to have randomized pools. So I know we're probably looking more at the SME market at the moment, but even if you are an SME and you do a bit of debt collecting, or you've got a small little call center, you know, even if it's just 1 or 2 seats, you've got the ability to add randomized pools. So what a randomized pool is you select a bunch of numbers in your system, and when people phone out, those numbers will change all the time. So it's a kind of a rolling effect around robin on the number, so you never use the same number. Obviously, if you run a sales team, you want people to be able to phone you back, so you're not necessarily going to use randomized pools. The exciting part of our TMS is the PBX manager. So what I'll go into now is just to show you a little bit of how easy it is to set something up. What I'll do is I'll start with queues, hunt lists, IVRs, and then inbound routes. So if you look at a queue, you know, a queue is basically, you know, call it a never-ending tunnel for a call to come in. There's a couple of ways for a person to exit a queue. Either the person's phone or the, you know, the call needs to drop and obviously it'll leave the queue, or they need to put the phone down. Alternatively, that call needs to get answered. So if I go into our sales queue, for instance, just to give you a little bit of information on that, you'll see it's given a name. You can say whether it's an inbound queue or an outbound queue. You can set some entry positions, entry conditions. So when a call is allowed to come in, you know, do you want to announce hold time, periodic announcement? Is there a message that you want to play? Is there some advertising you want to play in between while people are holding on? You know, weight importance of the queue, and also how calls get answered or distributed to the people that are actually answering those calls. Do they ring all available phones, and so forth. Round robin seems to be the preference when it comes to queues. It gives all, you know, everybody in the queue an ability to answer the calls. You can even set a service level, which means that if you want to, you know, which is great for the remote working. So let's say you've got a couple of people working from home and you want to make sure that they are actually answering your calls in the time that you want. You'll see here our sales queue is 5 seconds that we allow the call to ring. If it's anything after five seconds, it'll flag it in our reporting system that I'll show you a bit later, to say how many calls were answered outside of 5 seconds. That also gives you a good idea on, do you need more people? Do you need to make sure that people are available, and so forth. It gives you the options to actually put dispositions in queues, which I'll show you in the outbound queue. Basically what that is that you can give a call an outcome that you can then pull reports on. You want to distribute members to this queue, you go to the members again, you take it over and you drag it. You can set penalties or priorities on the queue. So how it works is anybody that is penalty 0 will get a call first. So with Euphoria, we start at penalty 1 because we do have overflow queues as well. That will allow you, if people don't answer it in the designated queue fast enough, it will go to the overflow queue so that all of our customers get to speak to a person. If I don't apply anything here, nothing will save, which I won't do at the moment. Hunt list, we like working with queues and hunt list. Now, a hunt list gives you more of a linear instruction. You know, it kind of starts at one event and it ends. It always follows the same kind of route. So again, I will show you what happens when it goes into a sales hunt list. So first of all, step 1, it plays an announcement. Step 2, it goes into the sales queue. Thereafter, if it doesn't get answered after the set amount of time, it'll play a message to say all agents are busy, and then it will go to the overflow queue where everybody in our company is then obviously in. If there's massive issues, it will go to an IVR and it will go to voicemail sales. But you don't have to set it up in this way. You can also add a ring group to say you would like to ring extension 101 and you'd like to ring extension 102 at the same time. Or maybe you would like to ring someone's cell phone number at the same time as well. So there's so many different ways that you can set up a hunt list. You can also move this up so that this is the first step and not the last step. And you can also
can I interrupt for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I think you're going into a lot of detail here. I think I mean, obviously it's very obvious this is very flexible. You can do whatever you want. Can we talk a little bit about the messages, IVR, and some of the reporting, rather than going into so much detail?
Absolutely. Cool. So once you've set up your IVRs, once you've set up your hunt list and your queues, you can set up your IVRs. Sorry, I need to do it in a little bit of a sequence, otherwise it doesn't make sense. So I'll show you the primary inbound on our IVR, right? So primary inbound.
What does IVR stand for?
So IVR, you know, it's either interactive voice response, auto attended, digital receptionist. There's many different names for basically the same thing.
This is the facility when you phone up, someone phones you, the phone gets answered by an automated kind of response with a message that routes you through to the people you need to talk to. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so in Euphoria's case, there's the message. If you want to record the message, you can basically go to your voice recordings. You can record the messages yourself. You can either use the recorder on the system. You can upload a voice recording that's pre-recorded or professionally recorded. And if you're using a physical phone, you can dial a feature code that takes you into the IVR voice recording studio. Plays a little message. It's very similar to using your cell phone and recording a voicemail message. You can listen to it and then decide if you want to keep it. Once you're happy with it, it saves it in this specific section. Now, because it's saved over here, you can literally go and pick it from a drop-down menu. So very easy, again, to do it yourself. Press 1, it sends it to support, 2 to sales, 3 to admin, 4 to porting. Inbound routes, again, if you've got different numbers, you can basically just set up where that number is going to end up at. Not going to go into details on the inbound routes. Little things like pause codes, you're able to set up your own pause codes if you want. There's a conference room, a virtual conference room. You can have up to 100 participants, which is quite nice for even big companies. Or let's say that you're working with a lot of other companies and you want them to conference in. It's a free facility. You can either phone people that want to participate, or they can phone in to your conference room. You've got the ability to look at your extensions and give those extensions different features as well. You know, features on this extensions, you're looking at call forwarding, call blocking. You can see the different queues it's in. You can set up voicemail to email. You can even have additional registrations, which means you're paying for one extension, but you've got access to that one extension on 3 different devices. Going further into some of the reports. So I'll start with the outbound call history, outbound call cost, incoming, and then call analytics. So outbound call history is very much an itemized bill with the actual cost of the call that's set here. You then obviously have options to filter via extension, filter via date range, and you can also export this and filter it, you know, to exactly what you want at the end of the day. Outbound cost analysis gives you easy access if you've grouped your extensions to actually see what the cost to company is for that specific group of extensions, as well as per extension. So there you can see support group today made 58 calls, total duration, cost to company for the day. If you want to look at the extensions, you can also see the extensions. Obviously, if you click on any of this, it'll give you more analytics on the specific extensions, access to the call recording, the extension analytics itself, as well as the itemized billing for that specific extension. So again, very easy to monitor what staff is doing and then have a clear view on what is happening within your PBX itself. It'll tell you most expensive calls as well as longest calls, who made them, the cost and the duration of those physical calls. Going further to incoming call history. Now, a lot of old PBXs have the ability to give you your outbound call history, but not necessarily your inbound call history. Here you've got access to the time and date of the number that phoned you, the call duration, was it answered, and the number that they dialed to actually get through to you. Same as the outbound, you can pull additional reports on time and date. You can export or you can display those results. Going a little bit further, I just want to get a little bit more data here to show you what the incoming call analysis can give you. So a lot of people that want to see, you know, what time of, you know, what day of the week or what time of the day are they getting more calls in order to perhaps plan shifts or to look at when they need staff available in the office to actually handle the calls. There you can see very clearly, Thursday, we got most of our calls. The time of the day when we're the busiest is between 9 and 10 in the morning. So I've obviously only pulled a small date range over here. So the bigger the date range, the more accurate your data will be over here. A very nice feature is an inbound DID report. So we basically use this as a marketing tool as well. So we would advertise different numbers on different landing pages, and then obviously see where we get the data from. What is working for us and what is not working for us, so that we can then decide what we want to cancel, what we want to continue on. So whether it's a magazine ad, a billboard ad, whether it's a small little radio ad, or flyers that we give out, we've got the ability to actually see where we're getting most of our interest from. Analytics. Analytics gives you a lot more information. So should you have agents or call center, you can look at the agent analytics. I won't spend too much time on this, but here you can see the amount of calls that people have taken, total queue calls, total unanswered calls. So it gives you quite a nice break of what people have been doing for today. Queue analytics. Queue analytics, I'll go into our support queue to just give you a little bit more information on what is available in the queue reports. So total answered calls today is 11, total unanswered calls are 6, total calls are 17, average wait time 16 seconds, average call time 4 minutes and 53 seconds. There you can see the SLA that I was talking about earlier. So the support SLA is between 11 and 20 seconds. And there you can see the amount of calls that's outside of the SLA in this particular queue. It also gives you a call activity by agent. So very easily you can see which agents are answering calls, which agents don't answer calls, and also who hung up the phone. So customer or agent. Total call time for the day, average call time for that specific agent. If you go into the queue log of this call, it takes you into a lot more detail, so you can see exactly what went wrong. So you'll see there, when you look at the events, the system will flag a call when it's got more than 4 events. So if I open this call, you can see at this time, the agent made an outbound call. So this is an outbound queue, made an outbound call. At this time, after ringing for 1 minute and 15 seconds, the agent abandoned the call, which means he put down the phone. At that time, the call was blind transferred after taking 0 seconds. So this blind transfer is for us to just track what actually happens to that call. But let's look at a call that had lots of different events. If you look at this call, you'll see that it had 8 events. So at this time, the agent made an outbound call. At this time, after ringing 21 seconds, the call the callee answered the phone. At this time, the agent put the call on hold. After leaving the call on hold for total amount of seconds, the agent removed the call from hold. The agent put the call on hold again. After leaving the call on hold, the agent removed the call from hold, and the call was completed after taking 19 minutes and 28 seconds. The agent put the phone down. So again, you can see it gives you a lot of information. I'd like to just show you some of the inbound queue analytics as well, just to give you some access to what happens to an inbound queue and how you can track that. Again, you've got the ability to export everything. You can see at this time, the caller entered the admin queue in position 1. The caller was connected. After waiting for 5 seconds, the agent took 5 seconds to answer the call. At this time, the agent put the call on hold. At this time, the call was completed after taking 21 seconds, the agent put the phone down. So it gives you a lot of information. This is also exportable, so you can then filter through the information as you like. Inbound analytics. This will take a complete session by itself. It's a lot of information to go through, but it just shows you when calls come in. Does it go to hunt list? Does it go to IVR menus? Where does the call start and where does it end? And then you obviously have the ability to drill into those calls to see what happened to those calls. So each of those sections you can drill in deeper to get to information that shows you exactly what happened to those specific calls. At every section, you've got the ability to export the calls as well as to listen to active call recordings that's available to you. Campaign analytics, again, campaign goes more with the call center solution, but I'll give you a quick glimpse of the campaign. So there you can see we're running a COVID-19 sales stats. So it gives a manager a full view of what is actually happening with their calling campaign. So should you have a small call center or a big call center, you've got the ability to set up campaigns. Real-time monitor. Current calls gives you access to see who's currently on the phone. Managers also have the ability to help internal people by either barging. So barge is maybe a bit of a harsh word, but it's more joining a three-way conference with one of your staff members that might need help. You can also whisper to your staff member to give them help. Alternatively, for quality assurance, you can spy on calls as well. Real-time extensions. This is more of an IT view, so it shows you which extensions are online, which extensions are offline. And if you wanted more information on that specific extension, it gives you some IT information regarding that specific extension. Real-time queue. It also shows you which queues are online, which queues are busy. If people are waiting in the queues, you'll see it says 0. Real-time dialer status. If anybody was on the dialer at the moment, it will show that it's online, but I know no one's on it, so I'm not going to go in there.
Marizette?
Yes.
Okay, so I think, what you're showing us here, there's like an amazing level of detail and reporting and management and functionality that you can go through here. I'm sure, it's, anyone who's interested would have to do a much more extensive demo, but it's really functional and flexible.
Absolutely. Yeah, so because of how the PBX is set up, you'll see that I've got many different logins. I've got my own home PBX, but in order to get my manager functionalities, and pull some automated reporting, I would have to go into a different account in order to show you the automated reporting.
We're just going into too much detail here. Can we switch back to the slide deck?
Yes, absolutely.
And let's just move on. You can just carry on going through the different features, which we didn't really finish. Sorry.
Okay. So, like I said earlier, there's mobile integration, so that you can use remote extensions, whereas traditional PBXs don't have mobile integration. Multi-office coverage. With physical PBXs, you need to have a PBX in each different site in order to link those sites together. Whereas with VoIP, you merely just add your extensions onto whether it's a hard phone, a cell phone, or your PC, and you've got multi-office coverage. Obviously, all of those calls are free in between the offices. We spoke about the fact that VoIP is fully scalable, whereas traditional PBXs, if you need more users, you need to add either a bigger PBX or add different cards into the PBX to allow that functionality, which then doesn't make it cost effective. It's very easy to use, and then obviously it's very low cost.
So, okay, so it really looks amazing. Anyone who's not using VoIP must be thinking this is really interesting. What are the costs involved?
So I've done a little bit of a cost comparison. If you look at analog lines, let's say for a PBX of 10 users and 20 users, you can see there, line rentals, and I've worked the line rental out at four analog lines and for the 10 user and 8 analog lines for the 20 user, which means 4 people can either be phoning out or receiving calls. And on the 20 user, 8 people can be phoning out or receiving calls. Whereas on the Euphoria Cloud PBX, you don't pay for the amount of concurrent calls that you are making. That is dependent on on your internet connection. So there's that, you know, massive saving on line rental. So what I have put in, just to show some costs, is I've put an LTE connection in there. So that LTE connection of $549, you know, can give you 8 concurrent calls, 8 to 10 concurrent calls, and the 20 user, you know, can probably give you 15 to 40 concurrent calls, depending on how many extensions you add to it. So you'll see that there's still some scalability, even if I've worked it on a 10 or a 20 user. So PBX per month, if you had to rent a PBX or have a finance agreement on over 5 years for a 10 user, you'll probably pay anything between 1,250 to about 3,500. I've worked on the lower amounts, and the 20 user, you'll see that your PBX goes slightly up. So usage, I've only worked on 1,000 mobile minutes to show you the amount that you'll be spending. So on an analog PBX, 1,140, whereas on the Euphoria PBX for the same amount of mobile minutes, 790. So you can see the cost saving there. Maintenance cost, both the analog PBXs have got a maintenance, which I've also kept quite low. Whereas the maintenance on the Euphoria Cloud PBX, you know, there is no monthly maintenance and it gets maintained. At the bottom, you can see the total on the saving that you'll have for the different users. So it's quite substantial. Obviously, a 20 user PBX will probably phone more than 1,000 minutes, but, you know, just to keep it in line with to show you the actual savings, I've worked it on 1,000 minutes.
It's Stephen again. If I'm a very small home office, let's say there's my wife, me, and another person working, how long will it take to set up, and is it worth doing in such a small environment?
Absolutely. Look, I would say, you know, majority of our customers are, you know, are small customers, because it gives them access to features that they wouldn't normally have, or it wouldn't normally make sense to get a PBX for 3 users. So a lot of people work off their cell phones or even just an analog landline. But there comes a time where you'll find that, you know, sometimes someone has to be out of the office and they'd like to be linked, or you'd like to have more of a professional look to the outside world, where you might need an IVR, or, you know, you might be a small business, but you receive a lot of calls. And with 3 people answering phones, you might find that all 3 people are busy at any given time. So you need to be able to queue people so that you can answer them and be available for them and not have to phone them back. So the cost saving that you would have just by not having to phone people back because they're actually waiting to speak to you is massive, massive, massive.
And so the second part of my question, I'm sure there are a lot of listeners who just say, if I decide to go for it, how long does it take to actually get going, to be set up?
Look, theoretically, a small PBX we can set up within like an hour or 2, but we try and keep things above board and give everybody, you know, time to give us the exact way of how they would like it to work. So, you know, you're looking at, you know, setting the extensions up, and those things are really fast to create. What generally takes time is getting the information back from customers. So, you know, we've decided to give a 5 to 7 day kind of leeway. Just, you know, obviously now in these times it's slightly faster because we don't have to go and do the actual on-site installations. That also has to wait for, you know, on Euphoria to have staff available to go and do those on-site installations. So we generally give, you know, a 5 to 7 day leeway on installations, but you know, if it's remote setups, we can do it a lot faster if we have the information.
I think that's, you know, I was kind of leading you through that because I want people to realize that it's not like you need technicians coming into your place and wiring things up, because, you know, whenever we think about this, you think about Telkom coming in or or the fiber guys. So it is advisable, though, that you do have fiber internet. But once that's done, you can do everything from your office for the home user.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I would even, you know, for a small to medium business, you know, anybody under, I would say, 30 users don't necessarily need fiber. They can get away with an LTE connection. The important thing to note is to not share your voice and data over one connection. So even if you've got, you know, an ADSL or a fiber connection in your office that, you know, a lot of smaller business don't have a one-to-one business fiber. They've got, you know, a broadband fiber connection, which means it's still contended. And, you know, just to give you a little bit more technical information on voice over IP, you know, voice over IP travels, you know, it's not like when you send an email where if the internet is slow or there's packet loss, it will just try again until eventually it's sent. You know, with voice, if there's a gap in your, you know, how fast the packets run to and from, you know, you've got a bit of a lag, and you don't want that. So we would always recommend that even if you're a small business, you can get a small, you know, I would say a 3 user could get away with 2 to 3 gig data package for a month's worth of calling. So you need very little data in order for your voice to be clear. So rather get a little separate LTE connection, or, you know, even for small users on a 2 meg ADSL, you can have up to 8 concurrent calls if you need to. But don't share voice and data, because that is the you know, that's the Achilles heel of any VoIP product. Unless you've got a one-to-one business fiber that is really well looked after and there's proper QoS over it, you know, voice and data shouldn't be shared, because, you know, it runs slightly different, and with voice you can't allow for it to be, you know, for there to be a second lag, because that messes up your voice. So the important part to look at is to really get separate connections to service your telephony.
All right, thanks. And then my last question, if I've got your system and I phone a mobile number, is that normal mobile rates?
No. So you know, if you look at something like Skype, for instance, if you phone within Skype, it's free because it stays on that Skype network. What makes Euphoria slightly different to the Skype free version, and I'm not talking about the version where you're actually paying to make calls, because that again works very similar. You know, we interconnect with all your major telephony providers, whether it's Vodacom, Telkom, international providers, which means that at some point it breaks out onto that cell phone provider's network, and then you're looking at interconnect costs and stuff. So, you know, our general rates on phoning out, you're looking at 64 cents for mobile and 34 cents for local and national. Whereas if you're looking at, let's say, a Telkom, you're looking at their cheapest rate, which is R1.14 for mobile, going up to, you know, about R1.79, R2.14, depending on which provider you're actually phoning. So Euphoria gives a blended rate, which means it doesn't matter which mobile provider you're phoning, it's 64 cents. And then local and national, there hasn't been a charge for national calls, you know, probably for the last 6 years. However, you'll find that, you know, analog providers will still charge you a difference between phoning a national line and a local person, even though the cost has disappeared. So phoning local and national, you're looking at 34 cents, also a blended rate.
I mean, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, that's massive.
Thanks, Marizette.
It's an absolute pleasure.
I just want to add to that. I mean, I hear everything you said there, but just so that everyone who's watching this knows, I mean, at Irontree, we use the Euphoria system. We do have a broadband fiber connection. As far as I know, I'm going to contradict you here, Marizette, because as far as I know, we don't have a dedicated voice line, even if it's a small one. Our call volume is roughly 10,000 calls a month in and out. and the voice quality is actually fine. We don't have a problem at all. So, I mean, I'm saying that in a nice way.
No, I mean, I can look into it. Look, like I said, you know, it works sometimes. On other providers, it doesn't. It really depends on your ISP and how stable your connection is. But
Cool.
but you know, I would be giving people the wrong advice if I say it's fine to share your voice and data, because majority of the time when people do share voice and data, there comes a time where the voice quality just isn't clear anymore. You know, it also depends on how many users are on that broadband connection. So there's a lot of factors that can change it very quickly.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to answer Jim, who's been asking a few questions. So, Jim, you're asking, what does VoIP look like in the office? And he says that is, we have a physical telecom unit. What changes? So what changes, Jim, is you'll no longer have that telecom unit at all. What you get is what's called a virtual PABX, which is a software device in the cloud. You won't see it at all. And what that gives you is more than anything, Marizette's spoken about, well, she has spoken about actually, the ability to work from wherever you are and whatever device you're using. So just as an example, when the lockdown got legislated, and in fact, we moved all of our people out of our office about 4 days before the lockdown was announced. And all that happened is everyone just took their laptops home. And if they've got internet connections at home, which they all do, fortunately, they really just fired up their laptops and carried on working like nothing's happened. So you would have a soft phone, which is a software device on your laptop, which looks like a phone, which you use with a headset, or you could have an agent on your cell phone, which you provide as well. And then you just take and receive calls on your cell phone, and it's connecting to that PABX in the cloud. So you don't have any hardware presence in your office at all. In fact, at Irontree, we started off with what looked like a traditional phone connected to our network. And we're probably going to stop using those phones because we're finding that the cell phone agent and the soft phone on the PCs works just as well. So I hope that answers your question. I'm just going to wrap up this session, just going back to the slide we started with. And I think what's important, if I just go to the next slide as well, just get rid of Jaco's poll. What I think we're trying to convey the message across this series of webinars, for those of you who hopefully have watched many of them, is that if you're putting all of these facilities and functions into the cloud, what you get is great business continuity. So it doesn't matter what the disruptive event in your office is, you can carry on working because there's nothing that can disrupt the ability to transact, whether that means you host it in the cloud on your server so you can still access your transactional capabilities, as long as you've got internet. Of course, this is all dependent on your internet connectivity. So you carry on working, as I say, whether you're backing up to us or you're hosting your server in the cloud, or let's just look at the other elements, your Active Directory, which we spoke about, disaster recovery. It gives you great business continuity when everything is in the cloud. It also gives you an easy way to work remotely, which I think is going to become the new normal. I know it's been forced upon us now, and those of you who can work remotely, I'm sure are, but I think it's going to change the way people work in future, and some people are going to carry on working remotely or have shifts where some people work at home and some work in an office. I think something which Stephen, you might want to address as well, it's a term that Stephen loves to talk about, a sense of control. And I think you've seen across all of our webinars, everything in the cloud has some kind of management console that you can use to manage whatever's happening, and it doesn't matter where you are. And I think that gives you a great sense of control. It also enables you to have predictable spend. So to address Jim's question once again, if you don't have a physical PABX or you don't have a physical server, you don't have to worry about CapEx, and you don't have to worry about replacement and insurance. And there's a whole lot of stuff which you jettison from a cost point of view, and it just makes your budgeting and your forecasting a lot easier. That's all I want to say about that. Steve, Jaco, Marizette, I'm not sure if you want to add anything.
No, thank you very much.
Dave, can I just add something?
Sure.
You know, in a business, like often people say, you know, what makes a good business? I mean, obviously the most important thing is that you're selling a decent service or product. But that sense of control, Dave, I mean, I think telephony is like the last mile, because with email, that's really digitized our communications. So, you know, you can always say to one of your employees, you know, show me the email you sent to the customer. But telephony was always something on the outside. You didn't have good control over it. And I think that this for me is the last mile. If you want to check out the productivity of your business and how many calls you were making and holding times and all that kind of stuff, I think that this is the perfect solution. So I need to repeat myself. In the beginning, for me, it was more about cost, but I can see that the amount of control that you've got here, and that you put quite complex things into the hands of just general employees, where you can set up and monitor stuff. I think that side of it's really fantastic.
Jaco, if anyone who's watching is interested in finding out more, who should they contact?
For now, they can just mail Jaco at intri.co.za, and then I'll make sure that we'll get them in touch with Marizette. Marizette, I'm sure you're fine with that as well?
Yes, perfect.
All right, excellent. Cool. Dave, anything else from your side?
That's all from my side. Over to you, Jaco.
All right. Thank you very much, Stephen and David, and a very special thanks to Marizette. This was quite informative. I think the details that were shared, nobody really understands what actually happens behind the scenes. And going through all those dashboards and analytics that you showed us, this is going to give insight to business owners that they'd never realized. I mean, like Steve says, actually having that audit trail with email, but now you actually have it with your telephony as well is really super powerful. Guys, that's a wrap. I see most of you have voted in our poll. Thank you very much for that. Our next session will be tomorrow, the Plan for Continuity one. A big caveat, the time for tomorrow's session is not 10 a.m. as usual. It's going to be in the afternoon. We've got an American, or sorry, a Canadian that's actually going to be joining us. So we just have to be cognizant of his time zone. But yeah, so tomorrow afternoon, 3 o'clock is our final webinar session. And then, yeah, who knows, during this lockdown, we might actually, based on the questions and answers that we've given in this series, we might actually have 1 or 2 more. So be on the lookout for that. We'll send out emails if there's more sessions coming up. But for now, thank you very much for joining, and that's a wrap. Cheers, guys.